As a physio at QE, one of the things I found difficult in later years, when students or young graduates came to work at QE, they were only expecting to take one patient every half hour, or perhaps every 40 minutes. They would see the patient, they would assess them, they would write copious notes, and they would make a plan of treatment. And then they needed to relax, perhaps add to their notes or whatever. Whereas I, as a physio, was taught that getting on with treatment and getting the assessment sorted out and getting the patient started with treatment without wasting too much time was also equally important. And over the years I developed this ability to just make myself a few notes as I was going along seeing the patient, make a plan of treatment, organise that treatment and get the patients sorted out with the particular treatment, go on and see the next patient. So I would have probably spent 10 minutes to a quarter of an hour, at the very most probably 10 minutes, particularly with an outpatient, assessing the treatment needs. And I would have that message in one little corner of my brain with some notes. Then I would go on and see the next one, and the patient, I would sit down at the end of the day or at lunchtime, whenever I had a gap, and I would probably have half a dozen lots of notes to write up. I never went home without having written them up, because so tomorrow would bring its own more problems. But somehow I did seem to be able to make that assessment and get the patient started and get on, whereas the new graduates could only deal with one thing, one person, one thing, and took it to a complete end before they didn't have that time management to be able to transfer and get on and do 2 things, 3 things at once. It was quite impossible. The other thing that I found always quite interesting, particularly towards the end of my time, was I would go and help out in the outpatients, particularly in the outpatient section, and the office staff went to deal with all the problems, and at those stages we often had waiting lists, and they would come to me into where I was working in a cubicle and say, I've got an old lady there, and she's in tears because she's going to have to wait till next week, or she's going to have to do something or other, and she can't have treatment this week. And I would look at the card, and they'd filled in the name, address and date of birth, and I'd say, how would you dare to call this lady old? She's younger than me, and I'm only middle-aged, so how are you going to cope with that? And we'd always have a little giggle and a little laugh, and eventually I'd say, well, if you ask the patient to wait, I'll come and see them in 10 minutes or a quarter of an hour, or whatever time I reckoned I was going to be available, and we'd see what we could sort out and discuss with them as to whether they would like some just hydrotherapy until we could assess their needs or whatever. And this usually managed to work the trick and keep people reasonably happy.